Sekiro ruined Dark Souls for me. And even though I saw the death screen more often than my own parents, no other game felt the same ever since. There is a specific feeling you get when you beat a boss in Sekiro. It's not relief or a cheap hit of dopamine. It's a feeling you can't quite explain to someone who hasn't felt it. And I have been chasing that feeling ever since. I went back to Elden Ring, I tried Dark Souls 3, and I played Bloodborne for the first time in years. But it doesn't matter if I beat the Nameless King or the Orphan of Kos. Every single time, there is something missing. And it took me a while to understand why. But when I finally found out, it was very uncomfortable. Because it isn't that those games got worse. Elden Ring is still a masterpiece, and Bloodborne is still one of the best games FromSoft has ever made. But every single time I boot up a game, I end up playing Sekiro. Now let me explain how this happened, because when I first started playing Sekiro, it looked like I would rage quit before the first boss. See, for my entire gaming life, I avoided Souls-likes completely. The reputation alone was enough. Games that kill you hundreds of times, give you no direction, no hand-holding, no difficulty slider, and apparently the community thinks that's fun. For quite a long time, I thought these people were insane. After rage-quitting Bloodborne back when it first came out, I stepped away from these games. But then, I gave Elden Ring a chance, and something clicked. Now, I'm going to save you from the entire backstory, but Elden Ring was the first FromSoft game that made sense to me. See, the open world meant that when a boss destroyed me, I could just go somewhere else, explore, get stronger, come back. Like at the time, the game felt hard, like really hard. But I could always do something to basically stack the odds in my favor. Like leveling up, getting a better weapon, or summoning spirit ashes. It felt like the game respected me enough to let me figure it out. From the first second of playing the game, I was hooked. And I loved it so much that I simply beat it 3 times back to back. And at that time, I thought this was the greatest game ever made. It went so far that I even made a video about how Elden Ring completely ruined other games for me. And if you want to learn more about that, make sure to stick around until the end and I will link you that video. Now, it didn't take longer than 2 days until people kept telling me in the comments, hey, you mentioned that you like the Japan setting, and since Assassin's Creed Shadows was such a pile of trash, you should try out Sekiro. So, I started looking at reviews online and watched a few gameplay videos of the game. And I bought it. Now, at the same time, the people mentioned it was going to be hard. But at this point, I had beat Millennia multiple times. A boss so difficult, she has her own support group on Reddit. So I thought, how hard can Sekiro really be? And I went ahead and bought the game at full price, because apparently it's never on discount in the PlayStation Store. And even more importantly, I have basically zero patience. Once the download was done, I started playing the game with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what was about to happen to him. However, the game sets the tone right from the start. You wake up in a well and you overhear the guard saying that your character has lost its will to live. Just like I did when I died 200 times to a specific boss, but we'll get into that. So, you walk out, get your weapon, fight a few pretty easy enemies, and then FromSoft does what they do in every single one of their games, because apparently they think it's funny. They let you face an unbeatable enemy that beats the crap out of you, and then the game really starts. Now, about 25 minutes in the game, you arrive at a giant door with an ogre chained right in front of it. And what I didn't know at this time, that this is going to be the first real skill check you get in the game. And the funny thing is that this isn't even a real boss. It's just a mini boss. And when you look online, apparently he is so hard and so early in the game that a huge percentage of players just stop playing the game at this point. Now, cocky as I was, I went up to him and started fighting him. I attacked him, I tried dodging, and I had a few very bad moments of trying to deflect him. I basically tried to use every trick I had learned in Elden Ring. And what happened was that he killed me over and over again. And there's this one move he does where I still wake up screaming today. And this is when he grabs you, breaks you like a twig, and throws you off the nearest cliff. Now, at this point, a better player would have probably recognized the problem. The game has a deflect system. You are supposed to hold your ground, read the attack, and parry it, and only dodge when he is trying to grab you. You basically meet aggression with more aggression. That's the entire combat philosophy. And it's the complete opposite of everything Elden Ring had trained me to do for hundreds of hours. And, as you can probably imagine, I did not recognize this problem. So, I tried something else Elden Ring had taught me. Run away, go somewhere else, and get stronger. See, early in the game, an NPC gives you a special bell charm, and if you meditate at a shrine with this bell, it sends you back into a memory of what happened 2 years before the events of the game. So, in simple terms, you can go to a completely separate area full of new enemies, new challenges, and new ways to die. The only problem with this strategy? The game doesn't have a level system like you have in other Souls-likes. If you can't beat an enemy, you can't just run away and come back later when you gained like 10 levels. And I knew this, but I still decided to run away and told myself that I'm going to use the memory to at least get better at the game and maybe find some cool items. But what actually happened was that I spent 6 hours inside the memory, dying constantly, struggling with most enemies, and not learning anything. I just kept sucking, but in a different location. However, eventually, after 6 hours, I fought my way through to the end of the memory. And then there waited Lady Butterfly. Now she is an elderly woman in a kimono who floats through the air and tries to kill you with knives and kicks. She is elegant, she's fast, and she has absolutely no interest in making this fight easy. I died to her probably another 60 times before I accepted the situation and realized I'm also not going to beat Lady Butterfly by playing correctly. So I went to YouTube, and what I found was a cheese strategy. It was almost insultingly simple. You hit her, immediately jump to the right, hit her again, jump to the right again, and repeat this loop endlessly until her posture buff fills up and she collapses. That's it. That's the entire strategy. It looked completely wrong and was basically me hopping sideways around a grandmother in slow circles until she gave up. And the funny thing is, not even this cheese was easy. It took me another 10 tries to get this right. But hey, at least I managed to beat her. Now, at that time, I definitely felt relieved. Not satisfied and definitely not proud. Just a very specific relief of a man who has been stuck in an elevator for 6 hours and finally found the emergency button. I knew this wasn't a real victory. I knew I hadn't learned anything. But the health bar was 0 and the game was moving forward. And that was enough for me at this moment. So after that, I went back to the ogre. And you might now think that after 6 hours in the memory and 60 attempts on Lady Butterfly, I had developed some fundamental understanding of the combat in this game. But, spoiler alert, I had not. It took me another 50 attempts to beat the ogre. And at that point, I was about 10 hours in the game and I had learned exactly nothing. But when I beat the ogre, I felt extremely good. Like a rush that I've actually earned it, even though I just spent more firecrackers on him than during Chinese New Year. Anyways, I moved forward and the next 2 bosses, which was the man with the coolest intro in the game, Gyobu Masataka Oniwa.
My name is Gyobu Masataka Oniwa!
And the Blazing Bull. They were both hard, but manageable. And I'm convinced I didn't beat them because I have gotten significantly better at the game, but because I had developed a very specific superpower. The complete refusal to quit. See, I had just paid $60 for this game. It was never on discount. And every time I thought about stopping, I remembered how much money I spent, so I kept going. And at one point, I reached Genichiro. Now he's the general who guards at the top of Ashina Castle, and he is the guy who cuts off your hand at the beginning of the game. Now, first, I thought the ogre was the skill check in the game, but it turns out he was not. Actually, it is Genichiro, and he represents the moment where the game stops being patient with you. See, every boss up to this point had been willing, to some degrees, to let you get away with sloppy play. However, Genichiro was none of that. He's fast, he's relentless, and he wants to see if you at least learned the basics of the game. If you run away, he punishes you. You try to heal, he punishes you. You try to dodge instead of deflecting, he punishes you. Honestly, I tried everything. I tried playing passively and waiting for openings. I tried fighting slower and more calculated. And I tried being kind of aggressive. But nothing worked. So I tried to do what I did with Lady Butterfly. Cheese him. I watched a video online that you could trap Genichiro near a door in the corner of the game, pin him against the wall, spam attack, and break his posture before he could recover. Now, I don't know whether FromSoft actually had patched this out or whether I was simply not good enough at the game to even cheese this boss correctly. But what I do know is that it didn't work. Every time I got near the wall, he would just hit me and I would die. Just let that sink in for a moment. I was so bad at the game that I couldn't even cheese Genichiro properly. And after trying to do this for another 30 times, I realized that it was probably not the best idea to rely on some cheap tricks to beat every single boss moving forward. So I decided to take my time and actually learn the game. And in theory, I understood that this game relies mostly on deflects. However, every single time I would go into the fight and he would spin towards me, my hands would immediately forget everything and I would start panic rolling into walls like I have learned in Elden Ring. This went on for so many tries that I stopped counting. However, at one point, I stopped dodging and only parried his attacks. Not because I made a conscious decision, but because I was so exhausted from doing the wrong thing for so long that my brain simply gave up on trying to be clever and I tried something different. Over time, I slowly got better. And during one try, I deflected an attack, then another, and his posture started cracking. And I finally beat him in his third phase. I couldn't believe it at that moment. I sat completely still and my hands were sweating. Not because I was happy, but because I was confused. Because the fight that had been destroying me for days had just ended. And it ended not because I found a smart way or a smarter cheese. It ended because for one brief window, I had stopped fighting the game and actually started playing it. I didn't fully understand what had just happened, but something had changed. Something that felt like a shift in how I was thinking about the entire game. See, in Elden Ring, when a boss stops you, the game quietly tells you to go somewhere else. You should explore, fight better weapons, level up your stats, and come back when your stats are higher. And the fight will be more manageable. And if you can't beat it at that point, just use Spirit Ashes. This works extremely well in Elden Ring because it's designed around that philosophy. And I had used this system constantly. Every time a boss in Elden Ring felt impossible, it was enough to level up, learn a few of his moves, and then you should be able to beat him. However, Sekiro gives you none of that. There's no going somewhere else. There is no leveling past the problem. There are no damage numbers to inflate, no stats to grind, no build to optimize that will make Genichiro feel like a speed bump. The game has one currency: understanding the combat. You either understand what the fight is asking of you, or you don't. And if you don't, the only path forward is to stay in the room until you do. And once I understood that, something fundamental changed about how it was playing. I stopped trying to trick the game. I stopped looking for cheeses, stopped looking for corners to trap bosses in, stopped approaching every new enemy as a puzzle to be solved from the outside. I started approaching them with the intent of learning their patterns, learning when I should deflect and when I should attack. And the game ultimately clicked when I realized that this game is entirely a rhythm game. And no, I don't mean that in the Guitar Hero sense. Not in the sense that there's music and you press buttons in time with it, but in the sense that every single enemy in this game has a rhythm, a specific tempo of attack, and a pattern that repeats. And every single time you deflect them perfectly, you get this extremely satisfying sound. And the moment I stopped panically reacting to what the enemy was doing and started anticipating The moment the enemy's next move stops being a surprise and starts being something I already know was coming, the fight stops being a fight and becomes something closer to a dance or a performance. And I noticed that first on a pretty basic soldier, an enemy I had probably died to 40 times in the early hours of the game. I was fighting him again in a new area. I wasn't paying too much attention, and I realized I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just going with the flow and knew his pattern by heart. It was deflect, deflect, attack, deflect, posture break, death blow. The whole fight maybe lasted about 10 seconds. And when I realized what just happened, I understood the game and was actively getting better. And I mean actually better. Not Elden Ring better, where better just means your flask count is higher. I was reading the enemies faster, my deflects were becoming more intentional, I was no longer just trying to stay alive long enough for something lucky to happen. I was actually making things happen. But then I met Owl. And one thing I want to mention here before we get into him. I know I compare Sekiro a lot to Elden Ring. And I just want to say that I still love Elden Ring as a whole game. But the combat system in Sekiro is just on a whole different level. But we'll get into that later. Now, let's get back to Owl. He is your character's master. He trained you, he is essentially Wolf, but 50 years older and knows every single trick you do. And fighting him feels deeply personal in a way most boss fights don't, because he doesn't fight like the other bosses in the game. See, every other major boss in Sekiro can be pressured. You learn the rhythm, you stay aggressive, you get in their face, and you keep deflecting and attacking until their posture breaks. But Owl? He refuses to let that happen to him. He retreats, he jumps away, he throws pallets, and uses every trick to reset the fight whenever you get close enough to break him. He is passive-aggressive in the most literal possible sense. But the good thing is that the game prepares you for fights like this, because now you know that every death has a reason. For example, at one point I overcommitted, at another point I chased when I should have waited, and at another point I forgot that patience was also part of the rhythm of the game. And when I finally managed to beat Owl, it felt earned in a completely different way than Genichiro had. Because Owl made me realize that all the shinobi tricks I used to beat bosses can also be used against me. And then there is the guardian ape I want to talk about. See, when I first approached him, he didn't look this scary. However, when I did start fighting him, it was a giant mess. See, I was just getting better at fighting humans that fight in a controllable and predictable way. However, the headless or guardian ape does none of that. He jumps around, punches wildly, and throws his shit at you. And I mean that literally. Once I finally beat him, I felt extremely good. The game gives you the shinobi execution sign and you feel relieved. Only to trick you immensely. Because even after you cut his head off, he will stand back up and start fighting you without his head. I struggled with it more than I would like to admit. I mean genuinely and properly struggled with it. But I beat him without a cheese or a trick. And even thinking back, I'm extremely proud of that one. Now I kept moving through the game, boss after boss, area after area. With each one, I could feel the standard rising. Not just my skill, but my expectations of what a fight should feel like. The rhythm of the game was becoming more natural, and the deflect was becoming an instinct. And then I reached the final boss. I reached Isshin. And if Genichiro was the wall that taught me the deflect system existed, Isshin tested if I had actually perfected the combat in the game. See, this fight has 4 different phases, arguably each one harder than the last. Each one demanding a level of focus that made every other fight before it feel like a warm-up. For 3 days, I sat down with the specific intention of beating this old man in a sword fight, and I failed over and over again. Maybe it was because he sometimes randomly pulled out a gun out of his sleeve. But at one point, I was so desperate that I even started recording my attempts and studied them the way you study footage before a football match. Looking for the moment it went wrong, building a mental map of the fight, and slowly getting better. And over time, the attempts got closer. But I wasn't quite there yet. he still kept beating me. And it was completely random in which phase he would beat me up. I hit a wall. So I took a break. For 2 hours, I went and did something completely different. And then I came back. And that attempt was different. I was calm, I wasn't cramping to beat him, and I was just trying to get better at fighting him. But I eventually beat him in that attempt. And when I did beat him, I didn't move, I didn't shout, and I just sat there because I understood in that moment exactly what I said in the intro of the video. The feeling that sits in your chest for a full minute before you can even move. The one you generally cannot explain to someone who hasn't felt it. I had earned it completely, entirely on my own terms. I didn't overlevel, I didn't cheese. I just learned the rhythm for 3 days straight and refused to quit. And what I didn't know at that time is that after beating Isshin, somewhere in the back of my mind, a new standard has been set that hasn't been there before. I didn't fully understand what that meant yet, but I was about to find out, because I immediately started the next FromSoft game, Bloodborne. Now for context, Bloodborne was the first game that started my entire FromSoft journey. It was the game I bought years ago, rage quit, and shoved it to the back of my shelf, pretending I have never played it. Now, years later, I pulled it up again. I played through the opening and I reached Central Yarmam. It's a dark, gothic nightmare of narrow streets, torch-carrying mobs, and giant men with meat cleavers who would very much like you to stop existing. When I played this area years ago, it had destroyed me. It took me hundreds of attempts just to navigate through it, and another endless amount of attempts just to reach the boss. The whole thing had felt overwhelming and unreadable, and mostly deeply unfair. However, this time, I walked through it on my first attempt. And I want to be clear, I was not being reckless. I was not getting lucky. I was just reading the enemies, watching their patterns, staying aggressive when aggression was right, and backing off when I should back off. Everything Sekiro had drilled into me for weeks was just sitting there in my hands, apparently completely transferable to another game. So I reached the Cleric Beast, the first boss, without dying once. However, I died on my first attempt fighting it. But then I walked back and managed to beat it on the second. And here is where it started to get strange, because I kept going. I played through Bloodborne with the focus and the patience I absolutely did not have the first time around. Bosses that the internet described as a complete nightmare felt hard, yes, but they were readable. Enemies that once had felt random and chaotic, like the Bloodstarved Beast, had patterns I could identify within a few attempts. Now, I loved every single second of playing the game. Lovecraftian setting, the lore, and maybe not so much the amygdalas that gave me the worst jump scare of all time. But I really enjoyed the game. And I finished it quicker than I thought I would be able to. So I got the DLC. Now, looking through the internet, the old Hunters DLC contains some of the hardest content FromSoft has ever made. And I completely agree with that. Ludwig is one of the fights I still think back to because it really challenged me. But the real enemy is at the end of it, the Orphan of Cause, a boss that has its own mythology online. You can look at tons of Reddit posts written like war memories, people describing the Orphan the way veterans describe difficult postings. It is widely considered one of the hardest bosses FromSoft has ever made. And I have to admit, it took me a lot of attempts, but it was nowhere near the 3 days I had spent beating Isshin Ashina. And when I finally beat the Orphan, I was sitting there, waiting for the same feeling I had with Isshin, the one that takes a minute before you can move. But it didn't come. No, don't get me wrong, it felt good, it felt satisfying. But the Orphan felt manageable, like a hard exam I had studied for and passed, rather than a 3-day war I had won on willpower alone. The Orphan was hard, like genuinely hard, but to me, it was nowhere near Isshin, and some part of my brain, without asking for permission, like bookmarked the fight under, it was fine. So I moved on to Dark Souls 3. I played to the point where I was fighting the Nameless King. A boss so notorious that his name alone carries weight in the community. Two faces, brutal aggression, and an arena in the cloud that looks like the end of the world. I died to him also a ton of times, but at one point it simply clicked and I was able to beat him. And when I sat there, waiting for that special feeling, it never came. And this is when I started to understand what happened to me. And I'm not telling you all of this to toot my horn or say, look, I'm so good at the game that I managed to beat these bosses. Because like I said, all of them are awesome bosses. The Orphan of Kos and Bloodborne as a whole was a masterpiece. The same goes for Dark Souls 3. But after finishing Sekiro, the 3-day war against Isshin, nothing has felt the same. And I slowly started catching myself that I was chasing a feeling that only one game has given me in my entire life. And that is something we need to talk about. Because the question now becomes, why did this happen? Why did beating Isshin feel like the greatest moment in gaming I have ever had? While beating the Orphan of Kos, a boss that on paper is great and has its own Wikipedia page of suffering, it didn't give me the same feeling. Why did I go back to Elden Ring, a game I played 3 times back to back, having the time of my life? But now, it left me like I had forgotten why I used to love it. And the easy answer would be that Sekiro is just harder. But that is wrong, and I can prove it, because I did play harder games before, like Super Meat Boy, Celeste, or other Souls games. However, none of what I did brought my ability to enjoy other games like Sekiro did. And even though I'm still not 100% sure what it was, I believe the next 3 things are going to come the closest. And the first one is the fact that Sekiro is the only game that cannot be negotiated with. See, every action game or Souls-like I have ever played has some kind of backdoor. A way to reduce the gap between what the game demands and what you, as the player, can currently do. In Elden Ring, the backdoor is the open world. You can grind a little, level up, and come back stronger. In God of War, you can simply lower the difficulty in the menu. In most action RPGs, there's a build, a cheese, or something else that makes it easier. However, in Sekiro, there is no backdoor. Sure, you can collect prayer beads, gourd seeds, or learn art styles, but none of them have the effect that you can just run down a hard boss without caring. The gap between what the game demands and what you can deliver can only be closed by one way: by getting better. By you sitting down, reading the enemy, and improving at a specific thing the game is testing. You cannot buy your way out of, you cannot open a menu and lower a difficulty setting, and you cannot strategize your way around it. Well, maybe you can with Lady Butterfly, but that's not the point. And the thing is that this ruthlessness sounds miserable on paper. It sounds like bad design. And is also the reason why so many players put down the game when they can't beat the Ogre or Genichiro. But in practice, this game design of forcing you to sit down and learn the game properly, to play it the way FromSoft intended, this is the reason why the wins feel the way they do. The game did not help you, the build did not carry you. You just got good enough. And that is a different feeling entirely from anything I had experienced before. The second thing is, Sekiro is the only game where difficulty is completely fair. Now let me explain this. Every death in Sekiro is your fault, and not the game's fault. Not an enemy that one-shots you because your level is too low or a broken hitbox. There's even an entire video that breaks down how perfect the hitbox in this game is. And this means when you die in Sekiro, the game did not cheat on you. You missed a deflect, you panicked, or you used the wrong move. Sure, the game is brutally hard, especially the inner fights, where I'm currently struggling with inner Owl. But once you understand the combat system, you realize that you could, if the game would allow it, beat the final boss right from the start. Now let me explain a bit more in detail what I mean with fair. If we compare it to a game like Kingdom Hearts on the hardest difficulty setting, if you walk into a fight like the Maleficent Dragon without being properly equipped or leveled, she would just kill you over and over again because you are not ready. And that's the case with most action RPGs, where a stat check quietly decides the outcome before the fight even starts. In those games, dying can mean you need more levels, just as often as it means you played badly. In Sekiro, the feedback is pretty straightforward. Once the combat system clicked, you know why you died and what you need to do better next time. And this fairness is what makes the improvement feel real, because you always know what you are improving. There is no noise in the signal. The game points at the exact thing that you need to improve. And the third thing is the one thing that ruined everything else. See, the skills Sekiro forces you to learn are real skills. It forces you to build patience, to recognize pattern, and it literally tells you that hesitation is defeat. And the thing is that these skills do not stay inside the game. You take them with you to other games. And this is my explanation to why The Orphan of Cause and Bloodborne felt hard, but manageable. That's why The Nameless King clicked within a few hours. And that's why going back to Elden Ring felt slightly too comfortable. See, Sekiro had not only made me better at Sekiro, it basically reset how I think about a lot of things in gaming. What a fight should feel like, what a win should take, and what it actually means to earn something in a video game. And I can only describe it as, once you know the difference between being handed a win and actually taking one, you feel it everywhere. Every game that hands you a win now feels slightly hollow, and every boss that folds without demanding everything from you doesn't feel like a victory. However, there is one thing I want to mention. Sekiro is not the best game at everything. See, Elden Ring gives you a world so huge that you could literally spend 300 hours in it and still find something new. The build variety alone is something Sekiro simply does not have. Bloodborne has the most unique trick weapons that no other games have been able to replicate ever since. Or The Witcher 3 has such an immersive storytelling that is so good that makes most other story-driven games feel like that they were written on a Tuesday afternoon by someone who had a deadline on Wednesday. And all these games I've just mentioned are better than Sekiro at specific things, but Sekiro beats them all in the combat system. And now, every single time I enter a fight in a video game, and it doesn't matter which game, genre or boss, I'm waiting for that feeling. And I believe Sekiro ruined that. However, now I'm extremely interested if any of you had a feeling like this, whether with Sekiro or a totally different game. Please let me know in the comments, and in the meantime, here's the Elden Ring video I promised you at the start. And now, I'm going back to trying to beat Inner Owl.